Hi, this is Andrea Richards Scott, and we are going to be talking about overcoming procrastination. I know this is one of those areas that a lot of people struggle with, and I really believe that when we get a handle on procrastination, we will start to see some things shift in our lives, and we'll start to go after our dreams and do the things that we were called to do. People procrastinate for a variety of reasons, and they procrastinate in a variety of ways. That's why I think it's so important to understand the dangers of procrastination. In this session, we will review several procrastination archetypes and discuss antidotes to procrastination. So be prepared to share how you've procrastinated in the past. Discover your procrastination style and find out how to overcome procrastination. This session has a workbook that accompanies it, so I encourage you to download, print out the workbook, and follow along with me. In this session, we are going to talk about reasons why people procrastinate, how people procrastinate, dangers of procrastination, procrastination archetypes, antidotes to procrastination, redeeming your time, tips for breaking bad habits, and procrastination busters. Reasons why people procrastinate. Sometimes we are so concerned about failure that we don't even bother to try. And then other times the fear is really in our subconscious, and we end up undermining our own efforts and don't continue to try to go after that thing that we want. Fear of failure has often been linked to the fear of success. Like so many other fears, it is so strong that it brings about the very failure that we were afraid of in the first place. Fear of success. This is another one. Success requires change, and change has both positive and negative consequences. Often while people claim that they want to succeed at something, in reality there are some negative connotations to change that outweigh the positive effects of the success. But it's not fear of success itself that's the problem. It's really fear of the side effects of success. Many of us generally want to succeed, but those side effects are unwanted, and so we fear them, and therefore we don't take action. These fears are never usually evaluated consciously, and they tend to grow stronger and stronger. The reason is that basic conditioning. When you avoid something you fear, either consciously or subconsciously, you automatically reinforce the avoidance behavior. And so, without even knowing it, you avoid working on your goals because of this hidden fear of success. You're actually reinforcing this procrastination habit. And as time goes by, it becomes harder and harder for you to take action. If you continue to avoid a particular situation, trying to do it in the long run becomes even more difficult. Fear of change is often accompanied by this feeling of insecurity, or maybe a feeling that you're lost. But a life that has no change in it isn't acceptable. A changeless life is monotonous and boring, unexciting. Life is always susceptible to change. If you suffer from the fear of change, you're soon going to lose your zest or your taste for life. The fact is that change is all around us. Change is happening all the time. We can't stand still. Even if we decided to stand still, things would change around us and we would even deteriorate. So we need to focus on moving forward and embracing change as a natural part of life. Fear of losing control. This fear is called agoraphobia, which is the same term used for fear of embarrassment. Some people have this really persistent fear that they're going to lose control. In fact, they have it to the extent that they have panic attacks when something unexpected happens. They want to be in charge of the smallest detail of their lives because they fear losing control. They need security. That's one of their highest values. But the world is changing all the time, and those who fear losing control can never really be happy because when change happens, they really don't know how to handle it. They are so occupied with this fear of losing control that they don't allow themselves to step outside of specific boundaries that they know that they can control. Fear of separation. Every single human being on the planet has this need to feel attached to another human being, and when they don't have that feeling of attachment, they often feel depressed or lost or out of sorts. there's really no exception to this rule. This is something that's natural. And this desire for attraction is really a driving force for us at any age, no matter what age we are. The fear of separation is that we are so concerned that if we meet our goal, or if we go after our goal, or if we're successful with our goal, then we will be separated from those people that we truly care about. Fear of attachment. Forming relationships is a vital part for every human being in order to have a satisfying life. In fact, our happiness, our self-esteem, and so much is greatly influenced by the relationships we have. Yet, some people fear attachments because they believe that if they get attached to someone, that person may let them down. And they're in this constant fear that people are not going to live up to what they expect, or people are going to hurt them or harm them in some way. So they have a fear of attachment. This fear of attachment is insidious and dangerous because if you fear attachment, then the likelihood of building relationships is going to be less. And relationships are typically the things that we need in order to grow and get to that next level. We need relationships in order to build our goals, our future, and to do the things that we were called to do. Fear of the unknown. This is kind of a peculiar condition in most of us. We find ourselves kind of nervous or fearful or at our wits' end when we start thinking about trying something new, going somewhere new, meeting someone new. It comes up, it bubbles up in us, and we sometimes have to force ourselves to tap it down. If we allow this fear to persist, we can ultimately lead a very restricted lifestyle, and we will miss out on so much in life. Which fears, if any, are stopping you from moving forward with your purpose? Think about that for a second. Go back to your workbook, spend some time journaling that question and seeing what comes up for you. Reason why people procrastinate. Other reasons why people procrastinate are internal limitations. So the first is low motivation. Low motivation can be caused by anxiety, depression, or negative thinking. And sometimes you can be too depressed to even tackle your issues. Lack of assertion. This is the unwillingness or maybe even the inability for a person to figure out what their own needs are, or to say it, to declare it, to tell everybody else what their own needs are. Lack of confidence. People who lack confidence often give reasons for their actions. They immediately respond to criticism. They overcompensate. They have a defensive position, and they tend to be perfectionists. And so that is something to look out for. If there's a lack of confidence, this can cause us to procrastinate as well. Bad habits. Habits, good or bad, make us who we are. Bottom line. The key is that we have to learn to control our habits. If you know how to change your habit, then even the smallest change, just the smallest of the effort, can create big changes in your life. Low frustration tolerance. This is basically where you don't have the tolerance to put up with anything. And so these individuals get frustrated very easily, and they are unable or maybe unwilling to tolerate even the smallest amount of discomfort that's required to make short-term or even long-term changes in their life. Difficulty making decisions. Being able to make decisions is an essential part of our life, whether we're working on something at our jobs or whether we're working on something at home. Making decisions means making a judgment between two or more alternatives. Individuals tend to make poor decisions by failing to obtain the most basic information so they can make intelligent choices. And so not being able to make difficult decisions stops us from moving forward, causes us to procrastinate as well. Inability to handle the task or lack of skill. Some people just don't have the level of competence that is required to do the job that's at hand. Maybe they need to go back and get additional training, but they take on assignments too quickly, and as a result, they get overwhelmed, they're paralyzed, and they can't move forward. And then some people have mental or emotional issues. These individuals may not be able to handle the task, not because they're lazy, incompetent, or unwilling. They just truly need accommodations in order to function normally. But if these things are not addressed, what ends up happening is nothing moves forward, and again, that looks like procrastination. So go back to your workbook and answer this question. What internal limitations, if any, block your progress towards your goal? Now let's talk about external limitations. The first is peer influence. In order not to stand out, some people are influenced by others who are also not doing anything. So this causes procrastination. If you look around and everybody else seems to be just taking it easy, not moving forward, it can be tempting to actually do the same thing. Lack of relevance. Sometimes we don't move forward because we don't make the connection to how the task is relevant to our mission or our purpose. Uncertainty of expectation. This is where we just don't have a clear understanding of what we're supposed to be doing or how to go about doing it. Accepting other people's goals. This is where we take on goals without buying into the mission or the purpose. And the thing is, this really affects our own goals, because if we're focusing on somebody else's goal, even if we're not focused on it totally, this doesn't leave room for us to focus on our own goals. Adverse nature of the task. Yeah, if we are afraid or unwilling to do something because it's scary, messy, or unpleasant, then what ends up happening is we just don't do it. This again is procrastination. Instead of going ahead and doing that difficult thing, that hard thing, we choose to opt out. We choose not to do it and move forward. Addiction to last minute deadlines and pressures. Yeah, this is where we wait till the very last minute to do something, and that adrenaline that comes from trying not to miss the deadlines gives you this rush, gives you this kind of euphoric feeling, especially when you come in right under the wire. Dependency on others, waiting for someone else to get started. Often if these people never show up, then nothing gets done. We abandon our goals or our objectives if we don't have the help and the support that we need. Which external limitations, if any, cause you to procrastinate? Let's talk about how people procrastinate. The first is disobedience. I say that procrastination is delayed obedience, or frankly disobedience in slow motion. Think about this story for a second. A man had 2 sons, and he said to the first son, "Go out and rake the yard." And the son replied, "I don't want to." But later he changed his mind and he went out and raked the yard. The father then went to the other son and told him the same thing, "Go out and rake the yard." The second son said, "Yeah, Dad, I'll do it." But he didn't go. Which of the 2 sons do you believe did what the father wanted? And of course, it's the son who said no but did it anyway versus the one who said he was going to do it and didn't do it. The child who said he was going to do it but didn't do it probably had all intentions of going out at some point, but he was procrastinating or being disobedient. And that's kind of how it is when we think about what we're doing. If we have something that we need to do and we actually say we're going to do it, but then we don't do it, we're being disobedient. Excuses. Years ago, I read this book called Let's Get Results, Not Excuses. And I don't remember everything in the book, but what did stick with me was the fact that whenever we neglect to do something that we've committed to do and we have a reason for it, that's just simply an excuse. No matter how good the reason is, no matter how valid that reason is, at the end of the day, we are making excuses. So we really need to get into this habit of doing what we say. Living by our word is the only way that people will trust us implicitly. In fact, we have to learn to trust ourselves, knowing that we're always going to follow through on those things that we say we're going to do. Laziness. Some people procrastinate in the form of laziness. They come home, they veg out in front of the television. We call these people couch potatoes. The problem with vegging out, though, is that there is so much time that's wasted by doing unproductive activities like television watching, going on the internet and surfing, checking emails for jokes and things like that, chit-chatting on the phone, gossiping. All of those things take up a lot of our time, and we think that we don't have a lot of time, but if we were just to evaluate how much time we waste on things that are not important, it would be amazing. It would be mind-blowing. On the other hand, there are some people who do a lot of things, and they do so much, in fact, they get to the point that they're worn out. And so at the end of the day, they do kind of veg out in front of the television because they're physically, emotionally, and mentally tired. It's important to make this distinction because it's not always laziness. Sometimes people may be working so hard on the wrong thing that they end up in the same exact position, not getting anything done in their own own lives. So it's essential in both cases to know whether or not we're just being lazy because we just have nothing to do, or we're overworked to the point that we wear ourselves out and then don't have the capacity to do the things that we need to do. Busyness. Some people get so busy doing so much, they don't have the bandwidth to focus on their major goal. While this may look good from the outside, it really is counterproductive. The more busy they become, the greater chance is that they will not focus on their purpose or their vision or their goals. Doing busy work only serves to burn you out and waste your precious time. So you need to start looking for things in your life that are not essential and begin to clean house. Get rid of those things. There is no time like the present. Make sure that every activity you do is something that is important and related to your intentions and your goals. Complacency. Some people just get stuck in a rut. They're satisfied with the status quo. They don't make any effort to change the situation at all. And then other people complain about the situation that they're in, but they're reluctant to do anything about it. Whether they suffer in silence or they're vocal about their unhappiness, complacent people do very little to make real and lasting changes in their lives. So how does procrastination manifest itself in your personal, professional, or spiritual life? Go ahead and make a note in your workbook. How is it showing up for you? Let's talk about the dangers of procrastination. So the first is decreased performance and productivity. The more you procrastinate, the less gets done, and the more you need to get done. So it becomes overwhelming and cyclical. The more that needs to be done, the less gets done because you can't figure out where to get started. Increased stress, anxiety, and guilt. The more your work piles up, the more stressful it can be. This causes anxiety, and you have a tendency to beat yourself up for not doing what you know you should have done. And then once the guilt sets in, it makes it even harder because you become depressed or lethargic, fatigued. It just makes it really difficult for you to focus on getting anything done. You lose time. When you procrastinate, you notice that time just seems to slip away, and for whatever reason, nothing gets done. You wake up, let's say a year from now, and you have nothing to show for all of this time that has passed. In most cases, you haven't really stood still while time has passed. If you really take inventory and take stock, what you will notice is that you have deteriorated. Burdens increase. The more you delayed, the more things pile up, and then they begin to feel like a burden. See, procrastination undermines your self-worth and self-confidence. When you procrastinate, you get used to not accomplishing too much. In the long run, you begin to look at yourself as a failure, and you begin to start expecting less of yourself. Ultimately, you start believing that you aren't capable of doing anything, and then in the long term, procrastination ends up being a vicious cycle. The more you procrastinate, the less you accomplish. The less you accomplish, the more you feel unworthy. The more you feel unworthy, the more you procrastinate. And so it just perpetuates over and over again. Separation from God. If you believe you have a God-given calling, procrastination puts you outside of His will for your life. Think about that. If you've been prone to procrastination, what have been the results of delayed action on your purpose? Let's talk about some procrastination archetypes. The first is the avoider. This procrastinator sticks their head in the sand to avoid unpleasant tasks. Their method of avoidance ends up making matters much worse. Often, the thing that they were trying to avoid piles up. And so then they end up having a more difficult task. It's like missing the payments on your credit card bill. It just doesn't go away. The interest continues to pile up, and then you end up being at a point where you have all these fees and charges that may even be greater than the original debt that you had. So the recommendation for this person who would avoid rather than take on the task is to have awareness. Get your head out of the sand. Really look at what's around you. When the bill comes and opens it. When you see a difficult task that has to be done, begin it. The more you focus on what's in front of you, the less you're going to procrastinate. The perfectionist. This person cannot do anything because it has to be perfect. They can't complete anything because it has to be perfect. And so they have to cross all their T's, they have to dot all their I's. They spend so much time sweating the small stuff, and they don't end up focusing on completing the task. They spend spend time criticizing themselves, and yes, they also criticize others because they don't believe that they're meticulous in their work. And so the recommendation here is excellence instead of perfectionism. And I always tell my daughter that excellence is doing your absolute best. And so if you do your absolute best at the end of the day, it may not be perfect, but it is the best that you can do. And that's excellence. Excellence is doing your absolute best and then moving on. The overcommitter. Yeah, this procrastinator is the one who can't get anything done because they have too much on their plate. Often this is associated with some kind of martyrdom syndrome. You know, this person is doing so much for everybody else that they can't get their own priorities accomplished. And the truth is that they really aren't useful to anybody else because they're not living up to their God-given potential. When they give so much to everyone to the point that they empty their cup, they can't be useful to anybody else. You know that announcement that they always have on airplanes. Make sure you put on your mask before you assist everybody else. Well, that's what this is all about. And the recommendation here is to make God your priority and to make yourself next in line. It sounds selfish. It sounds counterintuitive. We think we should, support our families and do all this other stuff first. But if you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of anyone else. The next one is the clutter keeper. Well, this one is the person who plans to get started once they've organized everything and sorted everything out. They have these high hopes that they're going to have this super structured, super organized system, and because they don't have it, they can't move forward to do anything else in their life. And so they lived a cluttered life. They have cluttered homes, they have cluttered cars, they have cluttered workspaces. The clutter just basically carries over to every aspect of their life. In fact, not only is their physical environment cluttered, but their mind is cluttered. They have so much going on that they miss appointments and they miss deadlines. And so it's important to sort things out. This person needs to get help if they need to, but they have to begin to sort things out, and they have to put systems in place that are going to help them to keep that space or item organized going forward. The lounger. So this is the person that would rather sit back in a lazy boy and watch the world go by. Typically, they're too tired to make any kind of real change in their life. But because of the pressures of society, I think it's pretty easy to confuse tiredness with laziness. Individuals who are lazy seem to get distracted by trivial things or succumb to mindless and routine behaviors, and they rather do this than break the pattern of laziness in their life. The recommendation here is to get moving. Just get moving. Start creating momentum in your life so you can begin to start seeing things happen and shift and change. The past perfect. This procrastinator has difficulty living in the present because they are still dwelling in the past. Either the past was perfect and they're trying to relive that, or the past wasn't so great and they're trying to figure out what happened. Either way, they end up missing out on opportunities in the present because they're so focused on the past. They're giving up the present and their future successes because they're unable to let go of the things that happened on the past. They need to focus on their current goals. So the recommendation here is to just live in the moment. Don't worry about what already happened, and you really can't control what's going on in the future. But if you control now, if you focus on now, live to your fullest now, then everything else will take care of itself. The nail biter. So this procrastinator is anxious and worried about everything. They can't seem to focus on what's really important, and they don't have enough strength or energy to go after their priorities because all their energy is drained by worry and fear. So the recommendation here is to replace fear with faith. Have faith that things will turn out right. And typically, even if things turn out poorly in the long run, you can always look back and find out what the lesson was or see how everything fit together. When we're living today, we don't really understand how all the puzzle pieces fit together. So don't worry. Have faith that things are going to turn out right. And if they don't, take it as a lesson and move on to the next thing. And then we have the waiters. These people won't do anything because they're just waiting. They They spend so much time waiting for something to happen instead of trying to figure out how to make things happen. They wait and wait and wait. I love this little excerpt from Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You'll Go. It's called The Waiting Place. The waiting place for people just waiting. Waiting for the train to go, or the bus to come, or the plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes and no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting, perhaps, for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a bread to break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. And I think that's what happens when we get stuck. We're just waiting for whatever. Instead of just going out and doing something, we are waiting. And so the recommendation here is just make it happen. Go do something. Shake it up a little bit. Make things happen. The thrill seeker. This arousal procrastinator is a thrill seeker who tackles projects at the very last minute, pulling all-nighters at school or work. They wait to the last minute because of that euphoric rush that they get when they get things done. The reason that they offer for their behavior tends to be external causes, like they're too busy. But if you think about it, they really enjoy being stressed out all the time, and they get a rush out of pulling out the stops and doing it at the last minute. The worry ward. This procrastinator can't make any decisions or take any action because they're worried about one thing or the other. They're so preoccupied about what can go wrong. Even though most of their worries never materialize, they can't help it. So the recommendation here is to cast away all your cares and to think positively. Which procrastination archetype do you identify with? Let's talk about some antidotes to procrastination. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. So probing. Ask questions to get to the root cause of your procrastination. Prayer. Seek God's help to understand which areas in your life need to change. Priorities. Identify what is and isn't important and what priority order you want to place them in. Maybe procrastination is really a way of saying something's not important to you. Perspective. Shift your perspective. If the thing that you are procrastinating about is important, then think about the joy of achieving it, or the pain of not achieving it. Example of shifting your perspective could be make it a game, do the hard thing first, and do for yourself in ways that you would do for others. Preparation. Preparedness is a positive character trait of being ready to take advantage of opportunities because you have used your time and energy wisely to prepare for future opportunities. Procrastination is the opposite, negative character trait. To procrastinate means to put off or delay or neglect, to use your time or energy wisely now, leaving you unprepared to take advantage of opportunities later on. When you procrastinate, you think you'll do it later, but you never do. So you are never ready when opportunities knock. Personal choice. Both procrastination and action are decisions. You make the choice. If it's important to you, you'll do it. If it's not important to you, you won't do it. Determine whether your motivation and desire are high enough to get you to do the things that you want to do. Partner with someone like an accountability partner. Get someone who will help you to stay honest. Someone who will support you. Maybe this is a prayer partner, mentor, accountability partner, coaching, individual coaching, or even group coaching. Progress. Take systematic action so that you can see some progress. Purpose. We're here on assignment. We are all created to do something while here on earth. It's our responsibility to figure out what that is and to make sure that we get it accomplished. Pressure. We have to have a certain amount of urgency in order to get things done. If we don't, it's easy to keep pushing it to the back burner until eventually we forget about it altogether. Peace. Stress affects concentration and can cause us to become distracted. We must learn how to relax. Peace can mean either freedom from conflict or turmoil, or an inner calm, a comfort that comes from within. Proactivity. We have to be willing to move forward. We can't wait for anyone else to do it for us or on our behalf. We must move forward. We have to believe that we have everything inside of us that we need in order to be successful, and then just move forward. Take that action. How will you overcome procrastination in your personal, professional, and spiritual life? Redeeming your time. So let's talk a little bit about urgency. Reacting to urgent matters in our life can create anxiety and stress. It also generally results in poor decision making and negative consequences. So it's really important to identify those things that are truly important to you so that you can focus on them before they become urgent. Don't put off the important important matters until you are in crisis. Prioritize your day regularly so that there are no surprises. Purpose. Knowing what your purpose is allows you to focus your time and energy on things that are related to it rather than on trivial, unrelated activities. Knowing your purpose allows you to say no without guilt because you realize in the long run that focus on things that are outside of your calling is counterproductive and yields very little rewards. Structure and order. All the things that you do should be done in an orderly fashion. When you are organized and orderly in your environment and your approach to a situation, it allows you to be stress-free. For example, you can avoid being late if you put your keys in the same place every single day. This way, you're not running around like a chicken without a head at the last minute trying to look for them. This is what will make you late. Seize the opportunities. We've heard the adage, opportunity knocks once. That may be true. Other opportunities may come along, but if you're not prepared when they do, you'll never achieve your goals. You've also heard the definition of luck is where preparation and opportunity meets. It's important for us to prepare now before the opportunities come so that we can take advantage of them. The best thing for us to do while we wait is to prepare. This can take on a variety of forms such as obtaining skills, certification, or experiences, but it also takes on the form of resting, rejuvenating, restoring. This will ensure that when opportunities arrive, you have the stamina needed to take them on. Accountability. It is important for us to live up to the things that we commit to. That's why it's a great idea to have an accountability partner. Sometimes we make promises to ourselves and break them. New Year's resolutions are a good example of that. Right around the third week of the year, people start backpedaling and abandoning their resolutions. An accountability partner will help us to stay on track and help us to keep our promises. What things can you incorporate in your life to create more space and time to reach your goals? I want to talk to you about some tips for breaking bad habits. So what is a habit? So a habit is something that we do repeatedly. And if you decide that you want to change or create a habit, you can focus on that change for 30 days. After that time, you have sufficiently conditioned yourself that this new behavior becomes a habit. Triggers. These are short rituals that you perform before a habit. So if you wanted to wake up early, you might jump out of bed right away as soon as you hear the alarm instead of hitting the snooze button, because this way you build up that automatic response to hearing the alarm. Another would be, say for example, if you have a desire to smoke, you could pop yourself with a rubber band on the wrist, and even though you might form a little welt there, the pain of that is a trigger that says, no, I shouldn't smoke. So think about triggers that you can incorporate to help you form these habits. Replace lost needs. So if you open up your computer and started removing hardware out of it, what would happen? Pretty certain the computer wouldn't work, right? Well, it's the same as if you pulled out a habit and then put anything back in there. You have to, when you replace a bad habit, you have to put a good one in its place so that you can have a functioning system. Giving up television might mean you have to find something to do with that 2 or 3 hours after work. Maybe that's a time for relaxation. Maybe it's a time for socializing. Maybe it's a time for getting educated or building up your skills, some personal development. But you have to replace an old habit with a new one. One at a time. So don't try to go overboard by changing a whole bunch of habits all at once. You have to really do this very systematically. Focus on just changing one habit. Once you get that one figured out and incorporated into your new way of life, then look at the other habits that need to be changed. But don't try to do things all at once. It will become too overwhelming. Joy. The difference between long-term change and giving up on the 31st day is this feedback of balance, right? If your change creates more pain in your life than joy, you're not going to stick with it. But if the change makes you feel happier, healthier, more fulfilled, whole, then the chances are that you will stick with it. A good example is if you hate going to the gym, you're not going to stick with it. If you prefer to run or walk or hike, maybe that's something you should do instead. If you diet and you don't like the food that you have to eat, or you don't like calorie counting or restrictions, then you're not going to stick with it. But if you find a diet that allows you to eat healthy, delicious, wonderful food all the time, and you never feel hungry, and that's something that's going to be a lifestyle change, not necessarily a diet, and you most likely will stick with it. Kill negativity. Whenever you hear yourself thinking negatively or speaking negatively, it's time to cancel those thoughts. Cancel it. Just either say cancel, and then repeat something that's more positive, or use a little word but. You might say, I'm lousy at this job, but if I keep at it, I will improve improve. Something like that, because we know the word but negates everything that was in front of it. So use it to your advantage. Write it down. I'm always telling you to write in your journals, and this is important because we don't have to leave all the commitments in our brain. Write them down on paper. This does two things. First, it creates clarity by defining in very specific terms what the change means. Second, it keeps us committed because it's easy to dismiss a thought, but it's really harder to dismiss something that's in black and white, that's right there in front of us. Have milestones. So do you have a 30-day plan, a 90-day plan, a 365-day plan? If you want something to be a habit, you have to have these series of checkpoints or milestones along the way. It will help you to stay on track. And the more you keep focused on it and the more you keep going back and checking on it, the more likelihood it is that you're going to stick with it. And don't forget to reward yourself along the way as you check off each of these milestones. Keep it simple. Your change should not be complicated. It should involve a couple of rules, not 100 rules. Exercising should be easier rather than more difficult. Instead of trying to exercise every single day with a bunch of complicated routines, maybe you set an intention that you're going to walk 3 times a week or something like that. But make it simple. Make it easy to follow. Make sure that you don't complicate your life. The more you complicate your life, the less likelihood there is that you will follow through on it. Simple rules create habits. Complex rules create headaches. Consistency is key. You have to get to the point where your habit does not require any thinking whatsoever. Variety is the spice of life, but it does not create a habit. Make sure that you're consistent as much as possible. And the more you repeat it, in fact, if you repeat something every single day for 30 days, chances are you are going to form a habit. This is going to ensure that the new habit is drilled in instead of just having a multitude of different things that you're trying to do all at once. Experiment. So, mix it up a little bit. If you don't like what's going on, try something different and keep trying it until you find one that fits you. Just because you start something doesn't mean you have to stick with it. If it does not work for you, try something else. It's really important to experiment. Don't try to focus on a habit because you should, but because you've tested it and it works for your life. What one thing can you commit to that will help you replace a negative habit with a positive one? Okay, so we're going into the home stretch. We're going to talk about procrastination busters. First is manage your goal. Feed them. Don't neglect them. Take action. That's how you accomplish your goals. Deal with setbacks. We all make mistakes, so go easy on your stuff. Understand that it's okay to make a mistake. And then the most important thing is to learn from them. Eliminate distractions. We talked about television, we talked about the internet, and we talked about chit-chatting or gossiping. Some of these things are going to delay you from reaching your goals. So log off the computer, switch off your phone, turn off the television, set some time that you can focus on what's important to you. Eliminate those distractions. Manage your environment. Get rid of clutter. Organize your environment. Create a home for everything. And most of all, get help if you need it. Don't just sit there and look at the clutter. If this is something that is a point of contention for you, this is the time to make a decision on how you're going to handle it so you're not going into the new year with this hanging around, still being an issue year after year after year. Manage your time. Create structures. Use a diary or a smartphone or whatever you need to make it visible. Put it on a blackboard. Put it on your refrigerator. Pin it up on a cork board. Anything you need to do to make it visible, but manage your time and make sure you're getting things done according to the time that you set for yourself. Watch your thoughts. This is so important. We speak negative things to ourselves on a regular basis. We think negative things that stop us from taking action and moving forward. Avoid negative thinking. I can't. It's too hard. Think positively. I can. I'm making progress. Watch your thoughts. Break projects down. Don't try to eat an elephant all at once. Take one bite at a time. Create systematic, simple steps and ask yourself, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? Instead of looking at the big picture, think about the little thing you have to do today. The one thing that you must do today to move you to the next step. the next step in your process. Visualize your goals. Practice visualizing your goals. Use all of your senses. Make it in Technicolor. Make it detailed and realistic as possible so that you can actually see yourself accomplishing these things. So, which procrastination buster do you need to focus on in your life? So we've been talking about overcoming procrastination. I want to encourage you to go back to the workbook and spend some time on this. As I said earlier, this is an area where a lot of people get hung up. We're talking about accomplishing our goals. We're talking about moving forward to the next level. And without understanding how to overcome procrastination, we're going to find ourselves stuck here, stuck in a rut, not making progress, not moving forward. Really do the work in this area and you'll start to see some changes happen in your life.